The counterculture used to be on the left, but once it won the culture war, it left space for a new counterculture. The biggest manifestation is the red pill phenomena, which the mainstream media mistakenly assumes is the same thing as the alt-right.
I was surprised to just discover the overlap between what I'm into, particularly like Greek philosophy and Stoicism, and the alt-right, who I'd always thought of, if I come across them at all, I thought them as kind of swivel-eyed bogeymen, completely unpalatable extremists in their basements. And then to discover that, a lot of them were, a lot of people into Stoicism were also really into the alt-right, made me wonder what was going on and why people like me were getting radicalized and drawn into it.
Could you explain what Stoicism is as a summary?
Stoicism is basically an ancient Greek philosophy which became very popular in the Roman Empire, with like the Emperor Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic, for example. And it's in some ways like a Western form of Buddhism. It's like a therapy for the emotions. It teaches you to take responsibility for your thoughts, and thereby to take some control over your emotions. So in some ways, it's putting forward a model of strength and integrity and kind of resilience amid adversity and rapid change. So for that reason, it's become very popular in the last 10 years.
I think this is also why, from my perspective at least, someone like Jordan Peterson is often looked from the outside as being aligned with the alt-right, because he has a similar message, but there are crucial differences, I think, between what we would consider. I mean, certainly white nationalism would be an essential part of the alt-right, I would say, of any useful definition. And yeah, that's certainly not characteristic of Jordan Peterson from my experience.
No, there's a crucial difference, at least between Stoicism and the alt-right, even though a lot of alt-right is into Stoicism, in that Stoicism and maybe Jordan Peterson as well, I'm not an expert on him, talk about the way to gain strength and maturity and power is internal. It's to take responsibility for your own thoughts and feelings. Whilst I think people sometimes, men, might look for that sense of power and control externally by suppressing or segregating anyone who they feel threatened by, whether that's other colors or other sexualities or gender. So there's a crucial difference there. One is about kind of inner integrity and just kind of being strong within yourself, and the other is about trying to take control through the kind of exterior borders and fences, if you see what I mean.
Every public appearance that I've made that's related to the sort of topics that we're discussing is overwhelmingly men. It's like 85 to 90%. And so I thought, wow, that's weird. Like, what the hell's going on here exactly? And then the other thing I've noticed is that I've been talking a lot to the crowds that I've been talking to, not about rights, but about responsibility, right? Because you can't have the bloody conversation. What are you doing? You can't have the conversation about rights without the conversation about responsibility, because your rights are my responsibility. That's what they are, technically. So you just can't have only half of that discussion. And we're only having half that discussion. And the question is, well, what the hell are you leaving out if you only have that half of the discussion? And the answer is, well, you're leaving out responsibility. And then the question is, well, what are you leaving out if you're leaving out responsibility? And the answer might be, well, maybe you're leaving out the meaning of life. That's what it looks like to me. It's like, here you are, suffering away. What makes it worthwhile? Rights? You know, you're completely out. You have no idea what it's almost impossible to describe how bad an idea that is. Responsibility. That's what gives life meaning. It's like lift a load. Then you can tolerate yourself, right? Because look at, you're useless, easily hurt, easily killed. Why should you have any self-respect? That's the story of the fall. Pick something up and carry it. Make it heavy enough so that you can think, yeah, well, useless as I am, at least I could move that from there to there. Well, what's really cool about that is that when I talk to these crowds about this, the men's eyes light up. And that's very, like, I've seen that phenomenon because I've been talking about this mythological material for a long time. And I can see when I'm watching crowds, people, you know, their eyebrows lift, their eyes light up because I put something together for them. And that's what mythological stories do. So I'm not taking responsibility for that. That's what the stories do. So I say the story and people go click, 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 you know, and their eyes light up. But this responsibility thing, that's a whole new order of this, is that young men are so hungry for that, it is unbelievable. It just blows me away. It's like, really? That's the counterculture. Grow the hell up and do something useful. Really? I could do that? Oh, I'm so excited by that idea. No one ever mentioned that before. It's like rights, 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 rights. Jesus, it's appalling. And I feel that that's deeply felt by the people who are coming out to listen to these sorts of things too. They've had enough of that. So, and they better have, because it's a non-productive mode of being. Responsibility, man.
Peterson is part of the counterculture, but he describes himself as a classic liberal, and yet he's frequently described as right-wing by the media. This is not limited to Peterson. James Damore's infamous Google memo was described everywhere as an anti-diversity screed, despite him specifically stating he wanted to encourage more diversity in the workplace. Many believe that the Channel 4 interview was a significant moment in exposing this mindset as dogmatic, reactionary, and fixed.
So during the interview, we see an example of a delusional framework that is what appears to be largely incapable of perceiving and reacting to reality in real time. But much more interesting is what happened afterwards, which was the sort of the self-healing and policing mechanism of the larger social consensus of how the Blue Church reactively goes about maintaining the integrity of its frame. And so what ended up happening was there was a break in the frame, there was a glitch in the matrix, the mechanisms of the Blue Church reacted to endeavor to control the frame and to convert it into a way of making sense of what occurred that still maintained the integrity of its frame.
Do you mean when they tried to characterize it as sort of abusive trolls and the alt-right hero and all of that?
Exactly. Exactly. It's sort of a, to use a military language, it was a fallback position that was a reactive, almost instinctual, and not almost, in fact, precisely instinctual. It was a pure habit. There was no thoughtfulness or even strategic action there. It was if X, then Y. And in this case, Y is, here's a set of things that one does to reestablish the dominant frame. And now we're 2 levels deep. You know, the first level was a sort of self-evident disaster, but then the second level was also a relatively self-evident disaster. And there isn't really a third level in this approach. So what ends up happening, and this is, again, we can kind of just think about this from ordinary psychology. This is how delusions fall apart. Try as we might, our desire to interpret reality to mean what we want it to mean, at the end of the day, will always be checked against what reality actually is. It may be some time. You know, we're pretty good at making things up and pretending, but eventually reality is reality.
This isn't to say that Peterson is not controversial. He's saying things that challenge the most deeply held assumptions of the new establishment narrative.
I guess the other reason that people are on my case to some degree is because I have made a strong case, which I think is fully documented by the scientific literature, that there are intrinsic differences, say, between men and women. And I think the evidence in that, this is the thing that staggered me, is that no serious scientists have debated that for like 4 decades. That argument was done by the time I went to graduate school. Everyone knew that human beings were not a blank slate, that biological forces parameterized the way that we thought and felt and acted and valued. Everyone knew that. The fact that this has become somehow debatable again is just, especially because it's being done by legislative fiat, they're forcing it.
Part of Peterson's argument, based on years of psychological research, is that much of the political conflicts are due to trying to integrate the different political temperaments of men and women.
La revolución necesita de tu ayuda. Deposita, suscríbete, comparte los videos, apórtanos en el Patreon para que podamos seguir luchando por la libertad.